right, we are heading up to Capitol Hill, where NBC's Geoff Bennett is live there for us, just stepping out of a news conference with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Geoff, what does she have as a top line this morning for all of you?
Well, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Nicolle, held her weekly press conference. She does it every Thursday. She started by talking about policy, making the point that House Democrats, she says, have passed 275 bills that have effectively died on the desk of Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, of course, the top Senate Republican. She talked about that, and then, of course, we got to the news of the day, which is impeachment. She didn't give much in the way of a timeline. I'll get to that later. But I asked her about this point. There was a time, and it's hard to believe now, but there was a time when House Speaker Nancy Pelosi wouldn't even utter the phrase impeachment inquiry, in part because she didn't fully embrace it, and she thought that to say that phrase in public would give it relevance and significance. And she said that one of the reasons she was cautious about approaching impeachment, this is well before September 24th, when the formal inquiry was announced, she said that it was a long and arduous process, that Democrats would expend basically a metric ton of political capital, knowing that in the end, they would likely not be successful in removing Donald Trump from office, because they likely would not find in the Senate 20 Republicans to join with the 45 Senate Democrats and the one independent who caucuses with the Democrats. So today, I asked her about that, looking back to her previous perspective and what she makes of all of it. Here's that Q&A. Before you sort of fully embraced the impeachment inquiry and announced it, you said one of the reasons you were cautious about it was because the process you knew would be long, arduous, and divisive. And it turns out that you were, in fact, right. And it seems as if we're in this position.
I don't think it's that long. It's not anywhere near as long as Nixon
but in
impeachment.
the sense that both sides are dug in, and impeachment has sort of taken on the tenor of being just like any other partisan dispute. And so
I don't subscribe to that, so I can't even answer a question.
Well, in the sense that it's not there's not bipartisan support.
Well, if the Republicans are in denial about the facts, if the Republicans do not want to honor their oath of office, then I don't think that this we should be characterized as partisan in any way, because we are patriotic. I take your point.
The question is, how does that change your calculus moving forward, or does it, as you try to make the case to the American people?
No, the facts. We said we wanted to see the facts, and we want the American people to see the facts. Whatever decision is made, and it has not been made yet, whatever decision is made to go forward will be based on our honoring our oath of office, not on the resistance to the truth of the Republicans on the other side. I think the sad tragedy of all of this is the behavior of the president and the defense of that behavior by the Republicans.
On this other issue, though, of the timeline, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has said what she said before, that the calendar and that no outside pressure will be the arbiter of where this investigation leads. Setting that aside, though, I can tell you that based on our own reporting, and given the fact that the House Intelligence Committee has not announced additional public hearings, they've not announced depositions, but we expect, and there's a huge caveat here that this could all change, but we expect that next week the House Intelligence Committee will use that time to draft the report. They'll sew together really the tapestry of evidence and testimony that they've been acquiring over these last, 3 months really, and that report will then be handed to the House Speaker. The House Speaker will then hand that report off to the Judiciary Committee. The Judiciary Committee then has the responsibility of drafting articles of impeachment. Already, House Democrats have signaled there could be at least two, one connected to what they see as bribery, the other connected to what they see as obstruction. At some point, assuming this all moves forward, the Judiciary Committee will vote that out of committee. It heads to the House floor. There has been an expectation for months now that Democrats would wrap that up by the end of the year. And Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he said on Monday that he fully expects that the month of January, if this process moves forward, January, the Senate trial would begin. Nicolle?
Geoff Bennett on Capitol Hill for us. Thank you very much.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.